Did you hear about the guy who couldn't pay his exorcist? He got repossessed. Well, it's time once again for my monthly unboxing and discussion of the offerings from HorrorPack. For those of you who don't know, HorrorPack is a monthly subscription service that sends you horror movies right to your door every month. They have a DVD option and a Blu-ray option. As you see from the two boxes, I get both of them. And each of them contains 4 horror movies. The Blu-ray pack also contains an exclusive, which is maybe never been released on Blu-ray before, or somehow otherwise exclusive to HorrorPack, which is always fun. And if you're new to the channel, every month I get both of these packages, I open them up, and I discuss whatever it is I find inside. As you can see, I've not yet opened them, so I really have no idea what these offerings will be. You're gonna find out as I do. When the first of these arrived yesterday, the mailman handed it off, noticed that it came from HorrorPack, and said something about it not being the Halloween season. But as y'all know, it's not just in October that we watch horror movies. We keep the Halloween spirit alive all year. We watch horror all year. June is a perfectly good time for horror movies. So, of course, it's a perfectly good time to open up these June 2022 horror packs. And so let's go ahead and get right to it. Let's open these up and see what we find. While I'm doing that, just a little bit of bookkeeping. If any of you are in the Denver area or might want to travel to the Denver area this coming weekend, around the 1st of July 2022, I will be speaking as part of Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society at the Denver Fan Expo, which was formerly Denver Comic Con, so that'll be fun. If you're not local, no worries. There's going to be a lot of spooky goodness and paranormal goodness in the future here on this channel and other projects that I am working on, including the Do You Like Scary Movies podcast. I'll leave links to all of my stuff down in the What's It, so you don't miss out on anything. But here are the 2 horror packs, so let's go ahead and see what we have. If you've been around this channel for a while, you know that I like to start with the DVD pack, and that's what I have here. So let's dive right in and see what HorrorPack sent us in the DVD pack this month. The first one we have is a film called End Trip. This is one that I'm not familiar with, but let's go ahead and read the description and see what it has to say. The description says, for rideshare driver Brandon, it's just another average night of picking up strangers and driving them to their destinations. But when he picks up a charming passenger by the name of Judd, the evening takes a disturbing and sinister turn for both passenger and driver. In a world where we place ourselves at the mercy of strangers, strapping into moving prisons, cruising down darkened, empty streets, maybe it's time to think about taking the bus. Yeah. Okay, this sounds like a good movie, but as for that taking the bus part, let's not. If you live in Colorado or if you visited, you might know that we have a magical sort of street named Colfax. If you don't know it, look it up. There was a time a few years ago when I accidentally had to take the bus that runs along Colfax. And let's just say that bus is a hell of a lot scarier than anything you're going to find in any taxi or Uber or Lyft or any other ride-sharing sort of service. But that aside, I kind of like this idea that passenger and driver are strangers, they don't know each other, and one of them could be perhaps not what he seems. That's an interesting idea. Reminds me of that joke of you're picking up a hitchhiker and the guy says, I'm glad you stopped, but how do you know I'm not a serial killer? And the driver says, what are the odds both of us would be serial killers? So maybe this is that sort of a movie, maybe it's not, but it sounds fun anyway. Looking forward to trying End Trip. Next up we have The Banishing. This one I know a little bit about. This was an original movie on Shudder, I think a few months back, and I saw the trailers and I thought it looked good, but for whatever reason I never quite got around to watching it. I do have Shudder as well, and I spend plenty of time watching that in addition to these HorrorPack offerings, but for whatever reason I did not yet get around to The Banishing, so I'm quite pleased to have gotten the DVD. Let's go ahead and read the description on this one as well. From acclaimed genre director Chris Smith comes the true story of the most haunted house in England. A young reverend, his wife, and daughter move into a manor with a horrifying secret. When a vengeful spirit haunts the little girl and threatens to tear the family apart, the reverend and his wife are forced to confront their beliefs. They must turn to black magic by seeking the help of a famous occultist or risk losing their daughter. That does indeed sound like an interesting film. Starts off cliche enough with the family moving into the haunted house. We've seen that before. That's not to say anything bad about it, because I tend to always like those movies anyway. I want to be the guy who moves into the haunted house with my family someday. Alas, this house is not haunted. Although, considering the kind of stuff that I collect, I imagine if there is a haunted house, it probably would be this one, but that's neither here nor there. But what I like about the sound of this movie is that it seems to take that haunted house trope and twist it around a little bit by making the lead character a reverend and then bringing an occultist in. And so we're going to play with different religions and different religious philosophies, different theology. Should be very interesting. The trailer looked good. I am very much looking forward to watching The Banishing. And next we have another one that I'm not familiar with called Hollow's Grove. The cover art is nice with the skull with the sort of camera lens on it. Let's see what the description on the back says. The description says, an FBI agent is making a documentary about unusual happenings. As you do. He follows a young filmmaker who is shooting behind the scenes of a ghost hunting reality show featuring his friends, the Spirit and Paranormal Investigation Team. They head out to their next assignment in an old, abandoned, and rumored to be haunted orphanage, Hollow's Grove. Most of their haunts for the show are created by their special effects technician, Bill, but what they thought would be a routine investigation is turning into a nightmare from which they cannot escape. I have said before, I like this kind of story about fraudulent paranormal investigators encountering something real. I think that's a fun story, and while it's very well explored in the genre, I do think there are still some new things that books and movies can say in that subgenre. And because I am a member of a not fraudulent paranormal investigation team, the Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society, and in fact we have lectured and will soon again be lecturing about some of these other teams that are on the reality TV shows, and yes, we have some thoughts about them. It's a really interesting idea, and it should make for a good film. One thing I will say that's maybe not to this film's credit, it was a little bit difficult to read the description. I had to do a couple of takes because the proofreading was not what it could have been, but I'm not necessarily going to hold its advertising against it. That's not necessarily written by the same people who made the film, and it sounds quite intriguing, so I'm certainly going to give it a fair chance, and as with the others, looking forward to watching Hollow's Grove. And finally, from the DVD pack, we have Girls Just Want to Have Blood. This one looks fun. I can tell immediately from the cover that it is a vampire movie. The little description says, being a teenager sucks, which may or may not be true, but I like the pun anyway. I like a good pun. Anyway, the description says, don't ever invite them inside. Fairly decent advice when it comes to vampires in general. Carrying on, when social outcast Jessica is accepted into a trio of teenage vampires, she finds herself thrust into a nocturnal world of murder, drugs, and all-night parties as they stalk the patrons of local bars and clubs. Meanwhile, a mysterious foreign vampire hunter searches the underworld in hopes of putting a stake right through their plan to party forever. I don't know whether this ends up being a horror movie, a straight horror movie, or more of a horror comedy. From the description, it could go either way, and either way, it sounds like it could be pretty good. It's another one that I'm not familiar with. There's really not a whole lot I can say about it. It looks good. I always like a good vampire movie. Hoping for good things, and as with the others, looking forward to trying this one. So that's 4 movies from the DVD pack that I've not yet seen. I like that. Sometimes I end up with one that I've already seen, and maybe it's a duplicate, or maybe I'm thrilled because it's one that I hadn't yet added to my physical media collection. And I am a physical media kind of guy. As much as I love the streaming services, DVDs and Blu-rays are still where it's at. But I really like when I get the ones that I haven't yet seen, because to me, the benefit of a subscription service like HorrorPack isn't just that they send movies every month, although that's great, but that they send ones that I might not have heard of, I might not have picked up. They introduce me to some new things. Every once in a while you get a stinker, but I have to say, I have loved more of the films that I haven't heard of than I really expected to, and they always seem to do a pretty good job of giving me stuff that I like, so thrilled to get these ones that I haven't yet seen. But that brings us to the Blu-ray pack. So let's go ahead and open these up and see what's inside of here. Before I do that, let me just remind you, please do like this video, share it with your friends, leave me a comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and go ahead and ring that notification bell. All of those things help me grow the channel, which is good for you too, because that means I can make more and more of these wonderfully awesome videos. And as I said before, I will be leaving links down in the What's It to my other projects, and I'll be leaving purchase links to where you can find some of these DVDs and Blu-rays, the ones that are at least available on the market. So be sure to check all of that out. There's always good stuff down in the video descriptions, so be sure to read all of those as well. With that little commercial advertisement out of the way, I hate to do that, kind of makes me feel like a whore every time I do, but I have to do that every time. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's look at the Blu-rays. And the first of those is The Sadness. This is a film that I do know. It came out on Shudder just a couple weeks ago, I think, and it sort of went through the horror community like, so it sort of went viral, so to speak, and a lot of people were talking about it. I watched it, and I did enjoy it. Let me start by just reading the description for you, in case you don't know about it. The description says, "The city of Taipei suddenly erupts into bloody chaos as ordinary people are compulsively driven to enact the most cruel and ghastly things they can imagine. Murder, torture, and mutilation are only the beginning. A young couple is pushed to the limits of sanity as they try to reunite amid the violence and depravity. The age of civility and order is no more. There is only the sadness." The quote on the cover from Rue Morgue magazine says, "The Sadness is the most violent and depraved zombie movie ever made." And it's not a true zombie movie. This is not Living Dead. This is more like virus that makes people go crazy, but it's still a zombie movie. And I don't know if I'm going to say it's the most violent or most depraved or most gory, but yeah, you might want to bring a bucket for this one. This one's already getting a bit of a reputation as an extreme film. Now, I'm going to be the first to say this is not as extreme as its reputation is already becoming, but that doesn't mean it's not extreme. This is extreme horror, so if you don't like that sort of thing, this one's not for you. If you do like that sort of thing, and I like that sort of thing, as well as the quiet, psychological sort of horror, I like it all. But if you like the extreme stuff, you won't be disappointed by The Sadness. This is a Taiwanese movie, so you'll have to read subtitles. I know that bothers some people. That does not bother me. I enjoy a foreign film, and with horror, I think a lot of times the foreign films end up being, not always, but frequently more effective because we are less familiar with the foreign tropes, so they seem more original, they seem scarier. I think that's a good thing. This is a good movie. This is one that I have seen, but I only saw it on Shudder. I did not have a DVD or a Blu-ray, so I'm pleased to welcome this one into my collection. And second from the Blu-ray horror pack for June 2022 is Queens of Scream. This is a set that comes with 3 movies. It comes with I Know What You Did Last Summer, Vacancy, and When a Stranger Calls. This is a set that I do not yet have and actually wasn't familiar with until now, although these are 3 sort of classic films that I have seen and do know. So this one's, I don't know whether to count this one as original or duplicate for my collection, because I have at least 2 of these movies. I've seen all 3, and I know I have at least 2 of them, but I don't have this edition. So I'm happy with it anyway. These are good movies. And these are all sort of within the slasher genre. They each have their own take on it. They each bring something original to it. They're all great films. This is a nice little set. I'm quite happy with this one as well. I'm looking forward to re-watching all 3 of these movies. Next, third, we have Bad Samaritan. This one I barely know about. This is a David Tennant film. He stars in the movie. And I have heard of it, but I don't really know much else about it. The little line on the front says, "Some doors are better left unopened." Let me just read the description and we'll see what we're in for. 2 petty thieves working as valet attendants, Sean and Derek, make income on the side by robbing rich people's homes in Portland, Oregon. When Sean breaks into the home of Cale Ehrenreich, he finds more than riches. He finds a woman tied to a chair next to an array of torture-inducing tools. Panicked, Sean leaves the woman behind and calls the cops, who search the house and find nothing. Now Sean must try to save the woman on his own, while a wrathful Cale is determined to take his revenge in this compelling and provocative thriller. I'm not going to say that's entirely original, but I've not seen a movie that follows that exact plot line, so I'm looking forward to trying this one. David Tennant's a pretty good actor. The rest of the cast looks impressive as well. It sounds good, looks good. Haven't seen it and know very little about it, but certainly looking forward to giving it a good try one of these next few days. And that brings us to what must be the HorrorPack exclusive Blu-ray. As I mentioned, one of them is an exclusive, never before on Blu-ray, something exclusive about it. In this one, if I take just a little peek, I see that we have exclusive number 72, and that is a film called Dead by Midnight. And, oh, it's actually a signed copy. We have, it looks like 4 signatures. I can't necessarily read all of them, but as I read the description, maybe we'll figure out who those people are. I'm assuming cast and director, maybe writer, something like that. It's not a film that I'm familiar with, but I like the cover. Let's go ahead and read the description. It's Halloween at WKIZ when the malicious Mistress of Midnight arrives to host her annual horror movie marathon, Dead by Midnight. When the WKIZ staff begins disappearing, only to turn up in the increasingly darker films, it's up to line producer Candace Spelling to stop the Mistress of Midnight before her final and most diabolical film goes to air. That sounds like a lot of fun. It's a plot that I'm not quite familiar with, but bringing a lot of the horror tropes to bear, so it should have a little bit of something for everyone. Sounds like a lot of fun. I don't know whether this is an anthology film that shows us all of those various films and then has a wraparound story within it, or whether it's just a straight movie about all of these movies. It sounds great either way, and I am very much looking forward to Dead by Midnight. And I am quite pleased that it has these signatures. I am a collector of signed things, more so books than movies, just because as much as I'm a movie guy, I'm even more of a literary sort of guy, and I just have more books than I do movies, and I know more authors than I do filmmakers. But that doesn't mean that I am anything less than thrilled to have these signatures in my collection and a signed copy of Dead by Midnight. And so that brings us to the close of yet another month with 8 wonderful new horror movies for my collection. As I mentioned, most of these I've not yet seen. A couple of them I have. None of these I had in my collection, at least in this particular version, which is wonderful. And what that really means for me is I'm going to go watch these movies right now. So while I'm doing that, what y'all need to do is take care and stay scared.